Welcome to Awake to Oneness Radio. I am Caroline Chen, your host. The mission of Awake to Oneness Radio is to inspire the world to awaken to the universal truth of oneness. Science is now teaching us that all life is interconnected and interdependent. And for eons, ancient wisdom and spirituality has been teaching us this truth of oneness for many, many years. And actually, it's not new science either. Science has been teaching this for over 100 years, quantum physics. So basically, what you do to another person, you're literally doing to another aspect of yourself. So when mankind awakens to the universal truth of oneness, there will be peace on earth. Today's show topic is Holofractal Universal Oneness with Tash of Metasoul. Did I say that? Tash. Did I say that right?
Tash is correct. Yeah, Tash. My site and YouTube channel is called Metasouls.
Yes, and that's how I discovered you on YouTube. I live on YouTube. And I was so thankful because Tash, you're in Taiwan?
Yeah, I live in Taipei, Taiwan right now.
Taipei. Yes. So he's halfway across the world. We are 12 hours difference. It is 9 a.m. here. It is 9 p.m. where he's at. So right. I actually like that 12-hour difference because it's easy to figure out the time.
Yeah. See, time isn't linear, right? Yeah. I've seen the future, and we're going to be okay.
Yes. You're in my future. I'm in your past. This is so true, but we know it's all the now moment. So
That's
please,
right.
Yes, I am so honored to have you. Can you please share with our listeners? Like I said, I discovered you a few months ago on YouTube. I just love your videos on YouTube. They're wonderful. I am just so in alignment with everything you say, and you I love how you say, because I say that too. It's not that I'm trying to teach anyone. I'm just trying to share. And from my sharing, if it inspires a person to go within and discover their own truth, and you say pretty much the same thing in your own words.
That's
yes.
Absolutely true, Caroline.
Yes.
Well, first off, I'm really honored that you asked me to be on your show, and I love just connecting with other people and sharing. I think if everybody in the world practices just sharing their own truth and their own authenticity, then people connect with that, and that in itself is a form of teaching and learning. It goes both directions when you open up that channel. So it's not about anybody, knowing more than somebody else or, being a guru. It's really about everybody just finding their own authenticity. And in that, the magic opens up for all of us.
That is so true. I'm so like I said, everything you say is like, I'm so in alignment with this guy. I have to have him on the show. So please, can you share with our listeners, share your journey, how you came to be.
Wow.
Where you are in this now moment.
Yeah, I'm not very good with timelines, working my way, through my life, but I can just give you some background.
Sure.
I come from a small town in Idaho. I was adopted at birth. Both of my biological parents were heroin addicts. I was born a little premature. My family moved to a small town shortly after I was born. And, I grew up in a very, I want to say extremely conservative environment, very, very religious environment, but it was kind of within the confines that it's not okay to go outside of those boundaries and really think for yourself. So I was always questioning, wanting to seek answers that I couldn't seem to find, as a kid in that small environment. And so basically, I grew up in that town. I remember, for example, having this conversation with my neighbor. And, when you're kids, you do things that you you would question when you're older. And I remember my neighbor, this kid, he was pulling the legs off of grasshoppers. And I asked him, I said, you know, what if a giant did that to you? How would you feel? And, you know, and through my life, I just kept questioning these kind of things and tried to make people see from another perspective, you know, even as a kid. And actually that ties in pretty heavily with what I'm doing now, is really to break down the borders of perspective. Perspectives in belief structures cause us to create borders between ourselves. And, you know, yes, we're here in these bodies living to experience what it's like to be separate from everything else. That gives us this unique perspective. But I believe that that is just the role of the ego, to immerse us into that experience. But ultimately, our free will is designed to help us to overcome those boundaries and look beyond our own limited perspective that has been shaped by our beliefs. And once we can begin to move beyond our belief structures and let them go, we find behind that is kind of, it's like the mask. Behind the mask, you find your true, authentic self. So, you know, when I was a pre-teenager, I went through some really hard times with my family and myself. And you know, I was, you know, my parents were having a hard time. They were going through, well, this is before they were going through a divorce. And I learned that I had a brother, and it's like turned my world upside down. This was a brother that was, you know, my father in another relationship. And, you know, my whole world was just shattered in that moment, because I had these very strong beliefs. I lived in a small community and everything was very secure. And, you know, then all these signs started happening. It was like the universe was speaking not only through me because I was holding on to these secrets. You know, I broke my leg, then I broke my arm immediately after, and then I had pneumonia. I had allergic reactions to the drugs in the hospital, and I had pretty massive hallucinations. This was a drug called Demerol. And then I started having panic attacks after that, and flashbacks, and all these things started happening. And they were signs both for me, because I was holding on to all this stuff, but they were also, I think, signs, you know, for my father and my family. But it's interesting when you get older, and I think all of us can go back and we can look at our past, and we can look to see how events have shaped us, how they've shaped our beliefs. And you have to be able to assess that and forgive. You have to let go of all the things in your past that shape your belief structures. It's really the only way to move forward, because your beliefs are what shape your expectations on the future. And this is what creates this perpetual cycle where every day in our lives seem to be very similar to the past, or very similar to the previous. You know, we all say, oh, we want all these changes to occur in our lives. But if you think about it, we all hang on to these beliefs, and then they perpetuate into the future through our expectations. So we went through this series of, you know, these things happening, just like one thing after another, where my whole life was just torn apart. And but eventually, you know, we made it through it. My parents ended up, you know, getting divorced. And, you know, when you look back, you look at these negative events in your life as portals. They're portals for positive things that end up coming later. You know, everything in life is relative. I say this in a lot of my videos. People probably get tired of me saying it, but you know, our experience here is based on relativity. There is no light without dark. There is no hot without cold. There is no small without large. There is no here without there. There is no now without then. So everything in life is based on this dualistic relativity, where we live in a polarity dynamic. And these two polarities, through any given situation in our lives, sustain the experience that we're having. So you cannot reject any polarity or anything that does not fit your belief or what you would think would make you happy, because really it's these opposites that sustain your ability to have those experiences. And when we go through these negative events in our life, if we look back, we can see that certain things never would have happened in our life had those negative events not happened. It would have not opened up other doors for us. You know, I look at my mother is in a happier relationship now. On my father's side, I have two beautiful brothers that, you know, nobody would have reversed time and changed those events. Those events were all portals that opened up into other experiences. So I think we have to look at life that way. And so this is how I started to think about the things that have happened in my life. And I was able to move past my panic attacks and all of that as a teenager. And my mother and I, we ended up moving, not too far. We still lived in Idaho and moved to another small city in Idaho called Pocatello. And there, the world opened up to me a little more, because to me, it was the big city. And there happened to be a new age shop, and I had never experienced anything like this before. You know, I was like a kid in a candy store trying to, I mean, all the things that my mind just wanted to grasp and explore, so much of the things that this type of store had to offer. You know, they had classes and there were just books and audio. I mean, I think I kind of became addicted to it as a teenager, and it became a refuge really for me to find, a little bit more about who I am and connect with things that I think were there all along that helped me to open the door. And, you know, from then, even all my life, strange events have happened, and I think it's probably common for most people, and I think people probably talk about it when you interview that. These events that I think happen when I talk to even people that I don't know well, or people who maybe even are a little skeptical. Everybody has these events that happen in their life, and it's just a difference in how we interpret them and how we either explain them away as being logical, or we embrace them without judgment. You know, and I had a lot of these type of events. You know, when I was a kid, our vacuum cleaner would go off in the middle of the night all the time, and when we moved, our television would turn on all the time. I'd come home from lunch in high school. We lived nearby, and we could leave campus. The television would turn on. I started to see these orbs move around my house, and it was almost like they seemed really intelligent. Where when I would see them, you know, I was walking out of my room, and I would catch it, and I would look, and it would swim under my mom's bed in her room, which was adjacent to mine. So, you know, wow. I really started to get this interest in the paranormal. I kind of, you know, that's really what started it all. I really got into astral projection and lucid dreaming, and I started to study it. And then I eventually started to write it. I met my wife, and we had gone to school together when we were younger, and I reconnected with her just out of high school, and we got married together. We moved in together. We had a daughter, and later we ended up having 4 kids total. They're all grown up now. They're it's amazing. Talk about time and how time flies. And, you know, there's a lot of synchronous events when it comes to the people you meet, you know, like my wife, for example. She also comes from a very conservative background, but interestingly enough, she is very, very intuitive. After we met, and you know, I was really into this stuff, and she didn't have any idea of any of it, but she ended up being, you know, much more sensitive than myself. She started channeling early on. We were only together, a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, and she started channeling.
Wow.
And that was pretty interesting. And I guess I won't go through everything in my past, but
no, it's great. Keep going.
Yeah, we ended up moving away from Pocatello, and we just went out. We had no intention, where we were going to go. We lived in Phoenix for a while. We came back to Pocatello, and then we ended up leaving kind of for good. We went to Oregon, and we decided we're going to just really explore this whole, New Age thing. And I don't know if you've ever heard of the WESAC convention down in California. No. It's like a big spiritual convention that they have with numerous channelers. This was really big in the 90s. So probably around 1994, we went down there. And during this time, we were really expanding and reading a lot of material. And we started to have all these things happen. Actually, we had these, I don't want to say crop circles, but they're like, I call them yard circles, these circles that would be almost like burned into our yard. And I ended up taking some pictures of it. Maybe sometime I could send it to you.
Sure.
And, my wife had an experience in the middle of the night, I guess you could say abduction. I don't like to use that term because I think it's kind of a contractual thing before you come into this incarnation.
Yes.
But we had a lot of this stuff happening, and then she started opening up to written channeling. And then these weird, just like synchronous events started happening. I'll give you an example where something just kind of slaps you in the face. We used to go to garage sales, like yard sales, all the time. And it was part of my work at the time. We were selling vintage clothing. And I went to this yard sale, and this guy had all these crystals out in his yard. And I went up and I was like, oh, he's got all these crystals. And I ended up meeting this guy. And he starts telling me, oh, yeah, he was like really into Atlantis and crystals and all this stuff. And he shows me this crystal. He said, this lady brought this crystal back from Atlantis. And, I was like, well, I was kind of getting into all this stuff, but I was a little bit, skeptical also at the time. And so he shows me this crystal. It's a really unique crystal. It's like flat on the bottom, and it's like ridged where it has all these bumps, and then it comes on the top, and it also has all these bumps. It has 2 points, and the points look almost like they're cut. And so he showed me this, and I thought, oh, cool, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then the next day, I ended up going down to Utah to pick up one of my dad's clients for what he was doing with the business similar to my own from the airport. And on the way, I saw this sign that said rock shop off this exit. And so I took the exit and I went to this rock shop. And it's like this guy's house. His house is turned into this rock shop, kind of in the middle of nowhere. And I go into his house and I walk, and I'm looking at all these crystals and stuff. And I walk over to this case, and there's the exact same crystal. And I asked him, I said, what is this? And he's like, these are manufactured crystals. He's like, I have hundreds of them. So they grow these crystals on a string, and then that's why they're cut. They're man-made, they're grown, and all this. So the point isn't to debunk something, but the point is that you pay attention to these synchronous events that happen in your life. And the point is not to read too far into the meaning of the event, but the fact that they're synchronous.
Yes.
When you connect with the fact of synchronicity without questioning it on, I thought, what is the meaning of this? This means that he was, lying to me, or the person who gave him the crystal made it up or whatever. No, the point is that if you live your life in the moment and you don't have an expectation, and you can start to connect and live from one synchronicity to the next, and that can become a way of life. It can lead you down your path. And it's not that event has to have some special meaning in itself, but more that it can direct you naturally, the way that a river would direct you if you were free floating down a river.
Yes.
You don't have to fight against it. You can connect with these synchronicities. So yeah, that was one example. And so we ended up moving to Oregon. And when we went down to this WESAC convention, I met a lady who owned a crystal shop down there in Mount Shasta. So this is where WESAC was, in Mount Shasta. You probably heard of that.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I was looking for some bigger pieces, and I asked her, if she had any more contacts for me. She gave me this guy's card, and she's like, well, he's the guy that wholesales to me. And like, she didn't even try to insert herself in the middle for business. I mean, she was just awesome. Just like, here's this guy's card. She's like, but
Right.
I don't think he doesn't talk to very many people. He just wholesales kind of in the background, but he's a healer, but he just likes to connect with people that stumble across him. And she's like, and I feel like I should give you this card. And so I called the guy up on our way back through Oregon. This was down in Ashland. And he answers the phone and says, yeah, come right over. And so we go over and we meet this guy. And when I first met him, I just talked about this on my last video that I posted. His eyes are like just piercing blue, and he looks through me, and I thought he was blind. And so I went to give him a hug, like, I'm over here. And, when I met him, I hugged him. And then, after a couple minutes, I realized, no, he's not blind. This guy's just like, and we walk into his house, and he has hundreds of crystals, and he has 3 dedicated rooms to crystal healing, and
Wow.
these huge, like, Earthkeeper crystals, and they were mounted in these giant copper pipes, and he had these giant beds with like copper grids on top of them. And well, he's the one who taught us about crystal healing, and he taught us about the use of copper as a conductor to facilitate the movement of energy through the body. So then I got really into studying it some more. I found out that people like Marcel Vogel, who was an engineer that worked for IBM, he held over 100 patents for IBM. And when he retired, he started doing studies on thought projection to plants, and he would hook up electrodes, and he would use a spectrometer to measure like subtle frequencies, and he was able to see that plants registered and recorded the frequency, a certain signature, based on your thoughts, whether you were thinking to uproot it and destroy it, or whether you were thinking positive thoughts
Right.
of love. He then carried that over into crystals and found that it amplified thoughts, much in the same way that they use a ruby laser in the medical industry to focus light to such a degree that the more that the facets are cut on a crystal, or a ruby in this case, the light is amplified, similar to how the sun can be amplified through a magnifying glass and focused.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you can use that in healing in the same way. And he found that he could transfer thoughts into crystal, and it would record these unique signatures of whatever your intention was, and it would amplify it 100-fold.
Mm.
And then he found that you could put it in water, and you could remove it from water, and the water would retain the same frequencies.
Wow.
So, so we really got into crystal healing at that point, and we set up our own, kind of mini practice on the side where we did crystal healings for people, and we had some amazing results.
Wow.
When you work with the copper grid and you use a certain breathing technique, the facilitation of energy through the body becomes very, very intense. And when you're using the crystals to focus your intent and move energy off the body that may be stagnant, that you're trying to get to move again, because we all tend to based on our belief structures, and this is used as a lens through which we judge the things that have happened to us. When we judge the things that have happened to us in the past, it holds a charge, and this charge is stagnant. It's not allowing the free flow of energy for you to move forward in your life to the next event. You're holding on to the past. This manifests in the emotional body, or you could say energetic body, and you can get a feel for where those parts of the body are that are having troubles, and they will kind of show themselves naturally. When you're on the copper grid, the energy moves so fast And when you're using the crystals, what happens is you hit these spots where energy doesn't move, and it hurts. It really hurts, and you can't control your muscles. Your muscles are holding on to this energy flow. And I mentioned this in a recent video. We had this guy that was a complete skeptic, but he was a friend where my wife's sister was dating him, and he wanted to go ahead and give it a try. And the emotions that surfaced, and he was in such pain, he couldn't move his arms, and your arms just start to bind up, and you can't let them go, and they're very painful. And I know what the guy was going through, because I went through something similar when we first learned this technique in crystal healing from the guy in Oregon, in Ashland. So this was a good example where someone who was a complete skeptic was in complete, pain until we were able to move that energy off of his body.
Wow.
And we had a number of other, cases that were big. Probably the biggest one was a lady that had a brain tumor, cancerous brain tumor, and she came. And by the time we were done with a few sessions, her brain tumor was gone. She went back to the doctor and ended up going away.
Wow.
But what happened is, and I heard this because the lady was friends with my wife's mother, my mother-in-law, and she was told that by somebody in her church that what we were doing was wrong. That it was, I don't know, evil, or they couldn't accept it.
Yes.
And the fear consumed her, and she bought into it, and her tumor came back. Now, we had moved after that. I don't know what ultimately happened, but it can show the power that we are not healers. We are only facilitators. We're just facilitating the movement. And it's your ability to move through these both emotionally and energetically, because they're connected, that can free you from dis-ease before it manifests itself in the physical, or even moving through it once it's manifest in the physical. But also the power of the mind to lock down based on your belief can electromagnetically attract those same energy fields and bind them much in the same way as what was happening before we ever conducted the healing process. So anyway, yeah, that's the background there.
Wow.
From Oregon we took off. We decided we didn't want to live there anymore. So we had lived in Phoenix for a while before we'd come back to Idaho. So we thought, why don't we go to Sedona? So we ended up just getting in the car. I had a side job. I'd saved a little money, and we got in the car. We left the kids with my in-laws. We said for a while we go and try to find a job. I'll go to Sedona, blah, blah, blah. And so we ended up going there. It was a disaster. I couldn't find a job because I didn't have a residence. Plus the jobs were very scarce. We were living out of a hotel, and they didn't want to give me a residence because I didn't have a job. And so we were running out of money, and we walked into this cigar shop, it sells magazines and cigars there. It's outside of Sedona, actually. This was in Flagstaff. And we walk in there, and my wife picks up this newspaper, and the newspapers, they had newspapers from all over the Northwest. And this newspaper was from Boise, Idaho, and it said, this company that I work for is hiring. And so she's like, let's go to Boise. I said, okay. So we packed up, we drove to Boise. I pulled up to the guard gate, and I got an application, and I turned it in, and the rest is history. I ended up working. Now, I've moved through currently through engineering, as an engineering manager, SPMO manager. So I've been with this company for, about 20 years.
Wow.
But on the side, this whole other parallel interest of mine keeps moving with me.
Yes.
And I don't know, maybe at some point the whole thing will converge, and I'll maybe do something full time.
Yes.
But I'm just go with the flow. When it happens, it happens. So then, we ended up moving around. We moved with this company to Virginia, moved back to Boise. 2011, we moved to Singapore. 2013, we moved to Hiroshima, Japan. In Hiroshima, we had a lot of interesting things really open up. That energy there is incredibly peaceful. And, there's a lot of trauma there as well because of what happened in Hiroshima.
Right.
But it allows one to really open up. And that's really when I kicked off MetaSouls. It brought me to a point of, probably the deepest point of peace that I've had in my life. I was able to work through and let go of some things that I had trouble with prior. And then I kicked off MetaSouls. MetaSouls, it's meta souls, meaning, we're all souls that are something greater than the individual parts, which is kind of what meta means. And then I realized that the T-A-S-O-U-L, Tasoul. When I was young, my nickname was Tasoul, which is weird. Tash is a Greek name, and it comes from Anastasi, and my relatives all call me Tasoul or Tasuli. And so, I don't know, it's weird. It all kind of connects, right?
Right.
And so, I kicked off that. I thought, I'm just going to do this and put a little bit more energy into sharing some of these things that come through me. And I'm just tapping into the universe in different unique ways like everybody. And when you find that authenticity, you begin to channel the universe. And we all have something to share. And that's really what it is it's just me, I say it's kind of called soul speak. It's just me sharing these truths that really parallel a lot of, quantum mechanics, for example.
Yes.
I had written a lot of work prior to ever even knowing what quantum mechanics or quantum physics was that paralleled it, exactly. It was very, and of course, Eastern mysticism all parallels quantum mechanics. So I thought that was pretty unique. So I ended up then studying more about it, kind of on the side, armchair, quantum physicist, at least theoretical. I can't seem to get through the math, but it's interesting, and so what ended up happening is through MetaSouls, through this channel, all the pieces started to fall in place that really came together in an entire theory that ties together quantum physics and a lot of the Eastern mysticism philosophies of Taoism and Buddhism, and a lot of things that come from myself. And it just all ties together, and it actually ties together very beautifully.
Yes.
I created a series called the Rainbow Ascension series.
Yes,
that it kind of goes from beginning to end. Of course, this thing is constantly expanding, but if you follow that series from beginning to end, you come full circle. And it's really, this whole thing was my own awakening at the same time. And I was really just sharing it. I speak it, and it sounds like I know what I'm talking about. And actually, a lot of the stuff is coming, and I don't know. And then it connects, and then you find really, the beauty in it.
Yes.
So in 2016, last year, we ended up moving to Taipei, and that's where we are now. My wife had this dream about the Rainbow Bridge. And it was interesting because I had this series called Rainbow Ascension series. And then when we moved here to Taiwan, we found that, what's it called? I don't know if in Japan, south of Japan, there's the, where Iwakuni, the island, there's a string of islands. Iwakuni's there. There's an island called Yonaguni, and there's pyramids that are under the water. You can see them online. They have, you can dive down to these pyramids that are in the water. Wow. Well, this chain of islands comes and it almost touches Taiwan. It's like literally, I think it's less than 100 kilometers or 70 miles. It's very, very, so the whole string of islands in Japan almost connects all the way to Taiwan. And there's these tribes that live on the eastern coast of Taiwan. That's just right off where this chain of islands from Japan connects. And these tribes believe in what they call the Rainbow Bridge. That when you cross the Rainbow Bridge, you're connecting to your ancestors. And I don't think it even says this anywhere online, but we were thinking that these islands used to actually all be above water, all the way to Taiwan, and that these tribes have some connection ancestrally, genetically, to the species that were developing and living during that time, which there are some people that are channeling a little bit about this. Actually, I don't know if you know Lisa Royal.
Not familiar.
Lisa Royal, she's amazing. She wrote the book called Prism of Lyra. Most of the galactic heritage information that you see online actually stems from her books in the early, maybe late 80s or early 90s, where she had channeled about the whole galactic history of the planet.
Wow.
And talks about all the different seeding of the planet, the roles that the Pleiadians played in the Syrians and so forth. And we got to know her. She does most of her work in Japan, and we did some contact retreats, etc. So anyway, there's these tribes, and they believe in crossing this Rainbow Bridge to connect to their ancestry. And then there's also, I think there's a movie, the term Rainbow Warriors not only comes from the Native American, but also comes from these tribes, because they were occupied by Japan, I think, in the late 1800s. And they had connected to this philosophy of the Rainbow Bridge. Well, it connects beautifully because rainbow is really a way to show how the oneness of white light through a prism of a raindrop is able to refract into different colors, and different colors all contain the seed of the white light within it, and it is able to mask off the other colors based on the angle and the speed through which it refracts through a raindrop, which only produces one color. And then all these raindrops together, produce what we see visually as a rainbow.
Yes.
So it's a beautiful, really, analogy to life itself, and the way that oneness itself is trying to experience infinite probabilities, is to understand and know every potentiality of itself as relative to every potentiality of itself. And in order to do that, it has to create an environment of relativity. It has to create separation, because without separation, it cannot know itself as relative to itself. There's no such thing as light without dark. There's no such thing as large without small. And so all of these immersive experiences require to have a polarized comparison, one aspect versus others. And it also requires other aspects of oneness to be masked and to be hidden in order to give you that unique unfolding and learning experience, depending on what aspect of oneness that you're experiencing. So I got this visual that it's like a map, and I call it a star map, because it's like, if you look at a map of the stars, it's all these different stars are these different 4D coordinates. And we live in a fourth dimensionality, which is height, width, depth, and time. And time is not linear. That's already been understood all the way back from Einstein's theory of relativity, that it's related to your position and your speed and gravity. And so you can view time and space together as space-time, like coordinates on a map. And every coordinate on this map, you could say it's like a star, is a here-now moment. And every here-now moment is unfolding, and we perceive it in our 4D linear mindset as moving from point A to point B, time A to time B, and we experience this. And I guess the challenge in life comes where our ego structure immerses us into the experience of this polarity. And growing up as we're children and we have these experiences, and our parents teach us, and our teachers teach us, our religion, society, television, everything, the whole social structure, political structure shapes who you are. And based on that, we develop this lens of our beliefs. And through that lens, we judge things that have happened to us in the past. And when we judge these things that are happening to us in the moment, but keep in mind, when we judge, it's already in the past.
Yes.
There can be no judgment in the moment. When we judge something, it's always judging something that happened in the past, or it's an expectation on the future. In the moment, there can be no judgment and there can be no expectation. Expectation's always forward-looking, judgment's always backward-looking. And so that's why every now moment is unconditional love. It's unconditional because there is no judgment. There is no expectation. So every time we find ourselves, judging the past or taking those beliefs through the lens of what's happened to us in the past, and we're projecting it onto an expectation in the future, we're pulling ourselves out of the moment, out of this coordinate on the map of here now. And we're not moving forward. We're not moving through life, because life only happens, things only are in the now moment. Things don't happen in the past. Things don't happen in the future. They happen in the moment. Right. So every time we pull ourselves out of the moment, reflecting and judging the past or projecting our expectations on the future, we're pulling ourselves out of a state of unconditional love, and we're slowing down the process of our experience, that coordinate, that data point on the map of all that is. And this is one thing that keeps us moving in a very linearized fashion, where we tend to move in a very tight radius on this map, because our beliefs limit and narrow down all the probabilities to a very narrow subset of what is possible. And we judge our past, and we're projecting those judgments onto the future. And so that's why we tend to create the next point and experience the next now moment is very, very similar to the previous moment. And so, we say, oh, I wish my life would change. I wish that I would have some big things happen in my life. And we have to stop and think about our belief structures, and we have to begin to let go of the past. And by letting go of the past and our judgments against the past, we can open up our boundaries. And by opening up our boundaries, we can bring ourselves back into the moment, and we can then begin to create. And secondly, we can have more of a fifth dimensional type of awareness. People talk about fourth dimension, fifth dimension. Fifth dimension is really the non-linearity of space-time. So if we say fourth dimension is height, width, depth, and time, fifth dimension is the non-linear movement of that experience. So if you really want to jump timelines, or you want to experience something very different from what you've experienced in your past, the first thing you need to do is really analyze your life and begin to let go of these past judgments that you hold, these belief structures. Mm-hmm. And it's not an easy thing to do, because you're ultimately admitting that everything in life, everything bad in life is purposeful. And it goes back to what I said growing up, that right. These are portals. They're mm-hmm. portals not only to sustain your experience when things are good, right. but the point isn't the good and the bad. The point is the integration and the movement through to experience. Because if oneness already is everything, and it's just masking off certain aspects of itself, like is in the rainbow, and you're experiencing your color, your colors, in order to give you that deep immersive experience, and you're polarizing yourself into a bias based on your beliefs. It gives you that. Your ego has a purpose to give you that immersive experience in life.
Yes.
but you aren't meant to stay there. Your free will is intended to allow you to rise above and see the dynamic, that it's a field, a single field, not a polarity A and polarity B, that both sustain each other, and to move beyond that.
Right.
And this is kind of, go ahead.
I just gonna jump in for a second here, because I want to even take that theme you've been discussing about the challenges that we go through in life a step further. And I'm writing a chapter now on that. Every challenge and difficulty we've ever gone through are actually our greatest blessings. Not only are they, they're actually, we all celebrate those happy times in our lives, which are great, but the challenges in our lives are actually more of a blessing than those happy party times. That's where we find our growth. We grow through our challenges, and we plan those challenges. Every challenge we go through, nothing is doing anything to us. We have created, like you had said, you described the incident with your wife when she was maybe abducted, but it was a contractual. Nothing happens to us without our consent. We are sovereign, divine beings, and we make these agreements and these contracts before we come into this existence. And every challenge we go through, we plan it. We even ask that person that shoots us and kills us dead. We ask in spirit realm, we ask that person to do that. Will you do this for me? Will you kill me so I could, whatever. But it's all a play. It's a movie of our own creation. And
absolutely.
The most difficult times of our lives are actually our greatest blessings. So, and I know that's hard for people to wrap their minds around, but
it's the hardest thing, especially when you're in the moment of experiencing something that, if it comes across as negative or bad, your mind finds it attaching itself to the event. Well, the event is already past.
Yes.
So that extreme attachment to something that you don't want to lose in your life, and you're connecting to it so hard that you're completely pulled out of the moment and you're attached to the past because you can't let go of it. That is pain. And pain is your reminder that you have separated yourself from the unconditional love of the moment. So I totally agree with you. Everything, I like to say, things don't happen to you, they happen of you.
Yes.
Everything emanates from you. It's all of our skeletons, all of our demons, everything that we experience in life, be it physical or our fears, is an emanation from ourself. And one way to kind of start to ease and get over that is if you can learn to see bad things in your life as being necessary and valid parts of creation that are of you, not something happening to you, then by default, what unconditional love is, because that is unconditional. There are no judgment, there are no conditions.
Yes.
And when if you subscribe to the idea that oneness itself is all that is everything, and that it is experiencing all of these potentialities within itself, then it's easier to understand, at least in theory, that all things are valid. Yes. Every experience in life is valid. And this is where it ties pretty well into quantum mechanics as well.
Yes. Well, I don't know if you know, but it was quantum physics that woke me up to the truth of oneness. What the Bleep? I don't know if you've ever watched that.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay. Yes, it was What the Bleep. What the Bleep. I had been studying spirituality and metaphysics off and on for 30 years, and I was not really getting it. I loved it, but I was like, I was not really understanding it until I watched What the Bleep. And there was one sentence. Lynn McTaggart said, the biggest illusion in the world is the illusion, or the biggest problem, the biggest problem in the world is the illusion of separateness. Not one sentence something woke up inside of me, said, this is true. It's all there is God. There is nothing outside of God. And whatever term, God, divine, source, universe, whatever term, the term doesn't matter. All there is all there is. And
Right.
there's nothing that exists outside of all there is. And
Yes.
all there is, like you said, you can't have light without dark. You can't have dark without light. The contrast, the polarity, and to keep it balanced, meaning not one is not, it's all neutral. We put labels on it. We label it good or bad. In truth, it's just all vibration. You know, you have a lower vibration, you have a higher vibration. It's where your free will, by your free will, where you want to vibrate. Where do you want to vibrate? Do you want to vibrate low or do you want to vibrate high? But there's no judgment in where that person is vibrating. It's all, like he said, it's unconditional love, unconditional acceptance of the now. And I love the now, what's happening in this now moment, and in every now moment. Just love what is. Because the what is what you're creating. That's your creation. Love it. Love your creation.
Yes, beautifully said. Beautifully said. Yeah, I think, if we can learn to think about the evolution of our consciousness. So if you think about you say in the title, holofractal, you can look at oneness through two different angles. One is that oneness itself is like a fractal, and to experience itself in every aspect of itself, it has to fraction itself. It has to fractalize itself. And if you look at the nature of fractals, there are infinite subfractals within every single fractal. There is infinite amount of separation within a fractal, but yet it's contained within the oneness or the wholeness of a single fractal. And then on the flip side, the hollow portion of holofractal is that then not only is every fractal itself contain an image of the parent, of the whole,
right?
But like a hologram, every component within a hologram, if you take a holographic plate and you break this holographic plate, every single component of a holographic plate can recreate the entirety of the hologram. It contains the totality of the whole.
Yes.
So in this game of oneness, fractalizing itself and immersing us into all these experiences, if we can remind ourselves that we are on a journey to evolve our consciousness through the experience of all of these data points on this map that make up all that is. And in order for us to, move through each moment, we have to move beyond duality. We have to understand that both polarities sustain the other. And when you merge that, you're able to move because you're no longer attaching yourself to the past and you're no longer controlling your future. You're able to move. And secondly, when you integrate things that you perceive to be negative in your life, you are expanding your consciousness to incorporate those things. You move above that polarized field and you integrate it. And when you integrate it, that becomes the knowledge of that experience. And that knowledge gained allows the expansion to move on to other experiences. And it incorporates that within the memory, the fabric of all that is.
Yes. So it's you transcend it. I love the word transcend. You're transcending it.
Absolutely.
by incorporating it. And the other, when I think of holograms and holographic, I think of Rumi's, my favorite quote of Rumi's is, you are not a drop in the ocean, you are the ocean in a drop.
Right.
Because we are all that is. we are all that is in a drop.
Yes.
And
that ties in so well with quantum physics.
Yes.
Quantum physics, one way to look at it is, without going into all the details, every experience in life, every decision point that we make is a narrowing down of infinite probabilities. And they're finding that, through quantum mechanics, that it's like an ocean. It's like an ocean that ripples up onto the surface. And where it ripples up are these points of isolated, seemingly separate experiences. But underneath these ripples is an entire ocean. And the ripple is always connected back to the entirety of the ocean. They find that even when they try to take a subatomic particle, a photon of energy, and they try to measure very specifically where is the position to determine, is this a photon of energy, a particleized matter, or is it a wave of energy, of light? Right. They find that the more they try to identify its position, the less they know about its momentum. The more wave-like, the more ocean-like the momentum becomes. And when they try to know the momentum, the more wave-like the position. And this is the wave-particle duality, that always, every piece of matter is always connected back to an ocean of probability and interconnectedness that I think is beautiful. And science has a hard time dealing with this because of the fact that we live in a reductionist society and we think of things as separate components. Science was always built on that, and now they're finding that it's all connected. And there are some pretty interesting theories out there. I would highly recommend other people, if you're interested in this, look up. First look up Hugh Everett, Many Worlds Interpretation, which suggests that when a wave of energy materializes and becomes physicalized, a point of matter, is when we consciously observe that light energy. This is the famous dual slit experiment, where a wave moves through two slits in a wall, a wave of energy, and if you don't observe it, that wave of energy hits the adjacent wall in a specific interference pattern. And when you do observe it and you measure it, it particleizes into a particle of matter and creates a different signature on the wall, suggesting that our consciousness, or at least our awareness of measurement, is creating reality around us. And when we don't create it, or when we look away, it's back to being all that is. Right. And they found that it can even change time, that when you measure it after it goes through the two slits in the wall, so it goes through the two slits as a wave, because let's say we don't measure it, and then we measure it after it goes through the two slits, we find that it measures like a particle on the adjacent wall. It had retroactively changed the course of history and went through as a particle. This is called Wheeler's delayed choice experiment. And,
because
these are paradoxes that are as science can get, that they don't understand. Right. That show the non-locality of time.
Right. I was just going to say that proves there is no time, because you can in technicality, you could go back in time, because there is no time. Time is just it's a measurement tool. That's what time is. But
then you get into these crazy ideas that I love to think about. I'll just throw one out there, is that if you think about it, at any point, let's just talk about, in normal terms, we say past, present, future. Right. If at any point in our future, the way we perceive our future, let's say it's 1,000,000 years, let's say it's 1,000,000,000 years or 1,000,000,000,000 years, at some point, any point in our future, that we are able to understand the nonlinearity of time, and we are able to interact with it in a nonlinear way, such as I described with the first steps are us letting go of our belief structures through which we judge the past and project our expectations on the future. that pull us out of the moment, we begin to experience 5D nonlinearity of space-time. But let's say at any point, even if it takes us 1 billion years to develop the technology, be it consciousness technology or physicalized technology, to bypass the linearity of time, then that means that right now we are experiencing people who are from the future.
Yes.
It's inevitable, right?
Yes.
And this is why you see so many people who are channeling future versions of themselves.
Yes.
Because it doesn't matter if it takes 1 trillion years. If we eventually are able to evolve our consciousness to 5D, to the nonlinearity of space-time, then by default, you are experiencing, there will be people here experiencing and influencing in that dimensionality. And this is why I think there's so many people that are channeling their future versions of themselves.
Very true,
Yeah.
very true. Well, I know of one that's a dear friend, Brad Johnson. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Yeah.
But, okay.
Yeah, his work's great. I love it.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
Reality Whisperer. Right?
Yes, Reality Whisperer, Brad Johnson. And also Bashar is extremely popular. I love him.
Yeah.
I've been trying to get him. Can't nail him down. Yeah, but I've had. And speaking about Brad, I mentioned to you that a week ago I launched a new website, Universal Oneness Alliance, which is an alliance between myself, Awake to Oneness Radio, Universal Unity, and Awakening to Our Truth. We have come to form an alliance, and we're actually hosting our first live event on September 3rd in Victoria, Canada, and Brad Johnson will be one of our featured speakers.
Oh, that's awesome.
Our presenter. So it's going to be Brad Johnson, it's going to be Tina Louise Spalding, and also Joanna Ross. So we'll have 3 channels, a full day event with 3 channels speaking. And
oh, that's great.
Yes, so that if you could get to Victoria, that would be awesome. But you know what? You know what? The wonderful thing, technology. We're not okay. So we have a beautiful venue in a garden that seats 200 people, which we're hoping to fill. But we also want to share that event with the world. So we will be live streaming from Victoria, the entire event.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I'll definitely be there.
Yes. So I'm very, very excited about that. So, and I'm going to send you all the information because I'd love for you to join our alliance. I just, it's you. I was listening to your YouTube all last night, preparing for, interviewing, having the show with you. I don't interview. I have conversations, but I'm so in alignment with everything you're saying. And you say it different. Your language is different than mine, but we're saying the same thing. Yeah. I always say, I like to keep it very simple because I like the simplicity of it. Yeah. No. I love you go into it a little bit more complex. You don't go into the math, but you go into the quantum physics really nicely. And it just, it resonates so beautifully. But I know some people will hear the quantum physics language and be a little, afraid of it. So I try to always keep it very simple. If you think of it, it's just we are all one, and it is proven. It's a proven fact scientifically. This is not new science. And I say on our website, our new website, oneness is not a belief. It is a universal truth. I started out saying oneness is not a belief. It's a universal. It's a fact. And anyone that tries to disprove oneness, when they try to disprove it, all they'll find out is they can't disprove it because it's just we are all interconnected. We are all one. And the beauty of that is when mankind actually awakens, and it will happen. And like you said, it doesn't matter if it happens in 1 billion years, but I believe it's going to be much sooner than 1 billion years. I think we're getting very close to that awakening of humanity when mankind awakens to the universal truth of oneness, that we are all connected. And what I do to another person, I'm literally doing to an aspect of myself. And when mankind awakens to that truth, we will experience peace on earth. And I believe it's not a million years away. I believe that awakening is coming very, very soon.
And the first step is to experience peace in your own heart.
Yes.
And I can't emphasize this enough to anybody listening, is that the best thing you can do is, talking about keeping it simple and keeping practical advice, is that if you can learn to let go of your past, learn to understand that your beliefs are creating a border, and that border through your beliefs is a separation, a wall of separation between you and other human beings. So learn to let go of your beliefs, and learn to, because, one key point is that our beliefs are, we want to bring happiness. Everybody seeks happiness in their life. And through our beliefs, we think that if only life could be exactly how we believe. If you could have every event in your life, in your future, your environment, the people around you, let's say the people around you think exactly like you, and your environment is just the perfect environment, then everything matches your belief, and you have this sense of happiness. But we've been taught that that is how we find happiness, so we seek it throughout our lives. We're always trying to find something to match our belief to make us more happy. And it gets to the point where we're trying to judge other people and kind of herd them to follow our belief. We want to convince them that what we're saying is more correct, our belief is more accurate. And if we can get everybody to fall in line with our belief, we think that we found happiness, and then we come to find out it gets pulled apart because everybody else in the world is trying the same thing. They're trying to match their reality to their beliefs. And this is the root cause of conflict, is that we expect everybody else to match our beliefs, and we try to control. It could be little things. You could be driving in the car and you want to control the way that, you're in the passenger seat, the way that somebody else is driving. We all have our little quirks where we want to control our environment and other people, because if it matches exactly what we think, we are trained that is happiness. But really, it can't be held. Happiness cannot be held because it's a web where everybody is pulling an individual strand to match their own beliefs, and their beliefs don't line up with yours. So they're going to try to pull their environment and the people around them in a different direction than you. Right. So what's the only solution is not to try to control everything to match our beliefs. It's to let go of our beliefs and find peace in everything, in any situation. Once we can do this, we let go of the control in the future, we let go of judgment on the past, and we find ourselves in the unconditionality of the moment. That is love.
Right. Unconditional love, unconditional judgment on the person, place, or thing. Don't judge what's happening. No judgment towards what's happening. No judgment towards the person. No judgment towards the situation. Just unconditional love in the here and now moment. And it is very simple. It's a very simple truth. Yes.
Yeah, and you can practice it all the time, just in your daily life, little things. Let go of control. Yes. Just let go of control. Let things happen. See where it takes you. And that's when the magic happens. That's when the synchronicities start to connect.
Yes. Going with the flow of life. Just going, let that river just go where it wants to go. And you don't need to know where it's going. Just go with it.
If you think about your beliefs and that are formed from your past, and you're trying to project and control your future through the lens of your beliefs, and narrow it down, what happens is it narrows down all the possibilities that you could be experiencing in your life to this small path that is a direct replication of your past, because you're trying to control your future to match your beliefs. Sorry, I lost you there for a second. Trying to control your future to match your past, because your past shapes your beliefs. So of course you're going to create the next day exactly like the previous day. You're not going to get the changes that you desire to see. And as soon as you just begin to let go, then changes start to happen.
True. And you start to make what I call those quantum leaps, because you're actually leaping timelines.
Right. You're no longer moving linearly in a fourth dimensional linear progression, because your future is always based on your past. You've broken that. You've broken the linearity and been able to transcend it into a 5-dimensional non-linear experience. And this is where I honestly think that this is where you're shifting timelines. This is where people are experiencing the Mandela effect and those alternate timelines. And we're beginning to shift, and we're like a television set, we're tuned into channel 6, and we're starting to be able to be flexible enough to blend channels and experience other realities. And this is where the forefront of science is moving to, is that we're currently stuck in a materialist viewpoint of science, where science only accepts things that are of a material phenomena. Anything that's a non-material phenomena is discounted. So things like paranormal activities and those kind of things are not considered to be real. But if you think about it, everything that you experience is only as good as through what you're experiencing it. Through your consciousness, what you know about science only comes through your consciousness, and it's only as good as what you know about yourself. So the exploration of consciousness and non-materialism is the future of science, and is the future of consciousness evolution on this planet. And I believe that's the next step towards our evolution that we really have to start thinking about and embracing, because it is a path to peace. It's a path to peace within oneself. And I say this all the time, like what Gandhi said, be the change you wish to see in the world. And it's a literal thing. When you can find that peace within yourself, you let go of the expectations that you have on other people. You free them. You free them to be who they are. And then they can turn and not feel bound to act a certain way towards your expectations. And they can learn to do that to other people. It's a chain reaction that really can light this world, light up this world and make big changes.
This is so true. This is you have to come back on. This has been amazing. I just glanced over at the time. I didn't realize.
Yeah, I know. I think we're reaching the hour point. So
we're past that. Wait, but that's okay. No. Don't say sorry. No, the one thing I love is that having my own show, I could go as long as we want.
Yeah, right.
no limits. No, I'm not in a box. No limitations.
That's right. That's right. Just go with it.
Yeah, we're just going with the flow here, and this is beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I definitely am going to invite you back. I'm definitely sending you the website on the Alliance. Remember, it's September 3rd. Like I said, this is a new venture. Just started. We just launched the website, and really want to reach out to as many people as we can reach, just to share this whole oneness. The Oneness Alliance is the purpose is to have a oneness hub. Just all these people that understand and live their life with oneness. We just want to connect them all together in this oneness hub. So that's
great. It's beautiful.
This is amazing.
I think you're doing a wonderful job of it. Like I said, we were talking earlier that people like yourself and Jamie, who from Awakening to Oneness, actually helped me out a lot with supporting my videos. You guys are like a hub that's connecting minds from around the world that are exploring the frontiers of consciousness, and we're all teaching and learning together from each other, and we're just expanding this circle. In many ways, it's like the evolution of our own consciousness. This is the beginning of collective consciousness. Being able to break down the borders between my ideology and yours, or other people, belief structures. You're removing those borders, and you're allowing the circle of consciousness to expand, to incorporate all that is.
Yes. Because like you said, everything is valid in the oneness. There's nothing excluded from oneness. So that's the thing I love. That's the beauty of it. That it's all that is all that is. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for having me on.
Oh, and we definitely gonna get you back, because I want us now to, our next shows, I want us to really hone in on like one particular theme. We covered everything, I think, in the show.
Right.
we can break shows up into themes, and I'll let you pick those themes.
Absolutely.
So we'll connect again with you on the other side of the world, with you in my future and I'm in your past.
Right, exactly.
Thank you so much. This has been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Caroline. Thank you to everybody watching. You know, I always say this, but there's really a deep, deep meaning behind it that's very simple. And it's live, let go, and love.
So true. So true. Namaste. Namaste.
Peace.
Thank you. Peace.
See you.
Bye-bye.